There are three inevitabilities in life. There's death, taxes, and the fact that most of your NFL predictions, no matter how good you are going to age horribly. And yet, here I am again. I guess I'm a little bit of a glutton for punishment in that way. I'm going to break this all down into three distinct parts. Part number one is going to be playoff seeding by conference, and by extension, who I think is going to win every single division. Part number two is going to be the awards like MVP, Coach of the Year, Offensive and Defensive Player of the Year, Rookie of the Year, all that kind of stuff. And then part number three is who I think is going to go to each conference championship game, so in essence like the Final Four, and then who I think is going to go to the Super Bowl when that's out near me in LA roughly 4 or 5 months from now. So we have a lot to go over, and yes, I am self-aware enough to know that most of this list is going to look really, really bad in about 6 or 7 weeks from now. It's going to age terribly, like most sports predictions do, but we're all sports fans. I would say that wild speculation and completely arbitrary lists are what we all do for fun, so let's have fun with it. All right, first up, we have playoff seeds for the AFC. I don't exactly know what some of you were expecting, but I don't really know how anybody can just do a chalk pick in the AFC in terms of playoff seeding, because this conference is a complete shit show in the best possible way. To put it in perspective, the worst team that I have making the playoffs in the AFC is still going 11-6, and at minimum, I think seeds 4 through 7 are all going to have the same record. I know that there's probably a lot of Bills fans out there that think it's absolutely insane to say that they're going to go 11-6 and maybe be a wild card, let alone lose the division to Miami. But again, I'm just going off the fact that the AFC schedule is absolutely brutal, and the fact that the Bills have to play Washington and the NFC South this year. I know it's very possible that they can go like 14-3, 13-4. Josh Allen is an absolute demigod at this point, and I expect their defense to kind of pick up where they left off and be better as well. But even just looking at their first 7 games, I mean, they have to play Miami twice and probably at least split with them. Remember, playing Miami in September is virtually a death sentence, so you can probably chalk that one up to a loss. They also have to play the Steelers, they have to play Washington, the Titans, the Chiefs. Really, their only break is Houston, but in that first 7-game stretch, I mean, they could very easily be under 500 at the end of that first 7 games. And that's really not indicating of them being a bad team. The schedule is just that ridiculous. I had Miami finishing with the exact same record as Buffalo, but just kind of as I went through tiebreakers, they ended up winning the division. So it's really not that crazy to have Buffalo as a 5 seed, even if I also think that they're a legitimate Super Bowl contender. Elsewhere, I obviously have the Chiefs being the 1st seed because I feel like their defense is ridiculous. They have a superstar quarterback, a great coach. They fixed the offensive line, which was really their only weakness personnel-wise, and they're just an absolute juggernaut, so I can't put anybody but them as the 1st seed. But the Browns are pretty damn close. When you look at the Browns roster overall, I mean, they're probably one of the 3 or 4 most talented teams in the entire league. Their only, I guess you could call it, deficient position group is linebacker, and even then, that's mostly just because it's a question of youth and not really a question of talent. So I do think that the Browns are a legitimate threat to upset KC and maybe even make a run at a 1st seed, but at least for now, I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt to the Chiefs because they've kind of earned it. The Titans I have at the 3rd seed because I feel like they're going to get a lot of wins within their own division. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if they went 4-2 within their division, maybe splitting with Jacksonville and the Colts at most, but even then, 4-2 in the division is kind of the floor to me. And then I do think that they're a strong enough team to also rip off some wins against some other AFC contenders as well, and they play almost all of them, I believe, in their regular season schedule. As long as Julio and A.J. Brown stay healthy, I think the passing game is going to be more than enough to complement Derrick Henry, who could also legitimately rush for another anywhere between 1,500 to 1,800 yards this year. I also think the defense is going to be better because it's really hard to be worse, at least on 3rd down, than they were last year. And I also really like Mike Vrabel as a head coach as well. So I think the Titans are kind of a sneaky play there. But you could also tell me that the Titans would lose in the 1st round to Buffalo, and I wouldn't bat an eye. Like, they could very easily go to the Super Bowl or lose in the wild card round, and I would believe either way. And then rounding out with the 6 and 7 seeds, I have the Chargers, who I think are a legitimate threat to the rest of the conference. Justin Herbert, really blew me away in terms of how quickly he kind of turned into a best case scenario for what I thought his physical talent could be. Like, you look at him in Oregon and then you look at him with the Chargers, and it's just not the same player. Like, I said that he was a boomer bust prospect, and he literally boomed from the moment he got on the field. I've really never seen anything like it, but good for the Chargers for making me look like a fucking dumbass because, my God, the kid's a superstar. And I also really love Brandon Staley. I love their defensive talent, assuming Derwin and Joey and all them can stay healthy. Really, health has just been their main issue, but when you upgrade the coaching staff and hopefully if their roster stays healthy, this team can, on paper, beat anybody. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if they split with Kansas City and finish not just at 11-6, but maybe even better than that. The talent is absolutely there. And again, I'm a massive believer in the coaching staff they put together. So I think the Chargers are kind of a sleeping giant right now. And if Justin Herbert continues on the trajectory that I think he's going on, yeah, they could legitimately be a threat to the entire rest of the AFC. And then, of course, I have another, I guess you could say, sleeping giant in the Ravens at the 7 seed, who I only put down here because they've really been dealing with some health problems already, especially at the skill positions. J.K. Dobbins is out for the year. Rashad Bateman's already dealing with injuries, and he might not even be close to 100% until like November. I guess we'll see, but again, it might be a while. And I just feel like the supporting structure that I was really excited about for Lamar that they were building around him has kind of crumbled away over the last few weeks. Obviously, the defense is still good. The running game is still going to be amazing. But the passing game, and in particular what Dobbins and Bateman would have brought to the passing game, that's just not going to be there, at least to start the year. So I wouldn't be surprised if they have a little bit of a slow start. They could probably rip off a big win against the Raiders because they tend to do pretty well in week 1, but weeks 2 through 6 might be a little bit dicey for them, and they might fall kind of behind the Browns and get into a hole that they just can't get out of. So I do think that they're at least a wild card team, and I wouldn't be surprised if they finish above the 7th seed, but again, because of health issues, it's just kind of a tough gamble for me to make right now. So again, that is the AFC, and then looking at the NFC, this one is a little bit more chalky, but there's also some pretty sneaky wild cards down there that could still do a lot of damage if things break right for them. I'll start at the very top. The Buccaneers are obviously a juggernaut on par with the Kansas City Chiefs. When you look at their roster, they really have no weaknesses. They're returning their entire coaching staff. They're returning all of their starters. They even just added more talent in the draft. There's really nothing preventing me from seeing them as favorites in virtually every single game they're going to play this year. So again, pretty much everybody in the NFC I see as like a tier below the Buccaneers, and I would be kind of surprised if anybody but Tampa finishes at that 1st seed. And then at the 2 seed, I have the Packers because Aaron Rodgers is back. Again, the variance there in terms of whether Aaron was playing or whether Jordan Love was playing this year. It's a pretty big swing in wins to have Aaron Rodgers be your starting quarterback. So I do think that they are going to be the 2 seed. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if they end up somewhere between 12-5 and like 14-3, just because Aaron Rodgers is absolutely incredible. He still has Devontae Adams. I feel like the defense might be a little bit improved this year. At least, hopefully, they're going to be a little bit improved this year. I say that every year, but I got to be right eventually, right? And then in terms of skill position talent around Aaron and Devontae, I'm a big fan of Amari Rodgers, who they brought in. He's got Randall Cobb coming back, who, if nothing else, Randall Cobb at least has a great connection with Aaron in terms of how they read coverages. So at a minimum, just kind of being in the right place at the right time as a possession receiver, that's going to be a big boon for Aaron as well. And then, of course, you still have that backfield tandem of Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, which is one of the better running back duos in the league. Offensive line is still a little bit shaky for me because we know that David Bakhtiari is going to be on the PUP list, so he's missing at least 6 games, which is part of the reason why I don't really have them challenging Tampa for the 1st seed, because not having your starting left tackle and really your all-pro caliber left tackle for the first 6 games of the year, it's going to be a little bit tougher for them to overcome. But by the time we get to December, by the time we get to January, assuming health is okay for them, the Packers are one of the few teams that I think can at least challenge Tampa Bay in the NFC. And again, when Aaron Rodgers is at his best, he can really beat anybody. It's absolutely a tall order to beat Tampa when they're firing on all cylinders, but if anybody could do it, it's Aaron. And then at the 3 seed, I have the 49ers, who are finishing here largely because I think this kind of 2 quarterback system of Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance could actually do really well for them. The Film Room episode that I posted a few days ago, it was kind of talking about an either-or scenario of Jimmy starting or Trey starting. But once we saw that third preseason game where they were actually kind of using both and mixing and matching, and I don't want to compare Trey Lance to Taysom Hill because he's better than Taysom Hill, but that kind of felt like how they were using him was just as a package player, kind of a change of pace on offense, and just giving defenses an extra thing to prepare for. I really think that this can actually work. I don't know how long they're going to try to do it. I mean, eventually Trey is just going to be the starter and he'll be out there all the time, but at least to start the year, having Jimmy be the starter and then Trey Lance be the changeup and just somebody who can kind of really get the run game going and, maybe take some shots on play action, I think that can actually do some damage here. And then you combine that with all the defensive talent they have, the coaching staff they have. I'm just kind of a big believer in this organization as a whole. So regardless of what's going to happen with the quarterback situation, which I know is completely ambiguous and nobody can really say for sure, I just feel really comfortable about putting them at the 3 seed because I just trust them to kind of figure it all out. And then at the 4 seed, I have Washington, who got an upgrade at their quarterback situation with Fitzpatrick coming to town, which I know it's not like a massive upgrade, but it's an upgrade nonetheless. And not to mention, I'm a big believer in their skill position talent with Gibson and Curtis Samuel, hoping that he's healthy. Obviously, Terry McLaurin. Like, they just got a lot of dudes there. Look out for McKissick and Jarrett Patterson. Like, their backfield is legitimately 3 guys deep. The offensive line, I think, is going to be much improved this year as well, assuming that Sam Cosmi is starting and staying healthy, because I thought he had a great preseason, just an absolutely freakish tackle prospect out of Texas. And then defensively, again, the defensive line is amazing. Their linebackers, I think, are pretty underrated, and their secondary is also low-key pretty deep as well. Say what you want about Fitzpatrick as a starting quarterback, but he's got a lot of talent around him. And when Fitzpatrick is more on the Fitz-magic side of the spectrum than the Fitz-tragic side, again, this is a team with enough raw talent that they could threaten almost anybody else in the conference. Again, they kind of had Tampa on the ropes last year, and they actually put up a better fight than Kansas City did in the Super Bowl. They put up a better fight than the Packers did as well, and that's solely because of just the sheer amount of defensive talent they have and some of the game breakers they have at the skill positions on offense. Like, there's something to work with there. I can't really put them above the 4th seed because, again, Fitzpatrick is just so inconsistent, but this is one of those teams where if you told me that they made it all the way to the NFC Championship game, or if you told me that they missed the playoffs entirely, I would believe either scenario. I really would. It's that kind of a wide variance here that we're talking about. And then in the 5th through 7th seeds, I have the Seahawks, I have the Rams, and the Cowboys, who all have a whole bunch of questions to answer themselves. Obviously, the Cowboys could finish a lot higher than this, depending on the health of Dak's shoulder, but in the absence of us knowing really anything about what's going on there, we really don't know how this is going to affect him until we see him play in a real game. And we're not going to see that until, the Thursday opening night against Tampa. So I don't really feel comfortable putting them above the 7th seed, but I also acknowledge that they could finish way above this 7th seed if Dak is healthier than maybe we think. And then with the Rams and Seahawks, again, this is just kind of a product of being in the same division as the 49ers. These are very talented teams with great quarterbacks, great coaching staffs. I think both of their defenses are excellent. I think they both have great collections of skill positions around their quarterback. I mean, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Chris Carson. I mean, you look at the Rams, they've got Woods and Henderson and all those guys. Obviously, Cooper Kupp too. I mean, both of these teams really are loaded. They just happen to be in a complete clusterfuck of a division that's very hard to predict. But I still had to predict this division nevertheless, and I ended up having the 49ers with one more win than both of them, so they both ended up being the 5 and the 6 seed, and San Francisco, again, was that 3rd seed. But overall, general theme here, not just with the NFC, but with the AFC as well, is that both of these Super Bowl teams from last year are absolutely unequivocally loaded, and I both have them returning as the first seeds for this year. I don't anticipate any drop-off for either of them, and to be honest, I consider both Tampa and Kansas City to be each other's greatest threats. Ooh, that's good scotch. Now, I'm pretty sure that this awards portion of the episode is going to be even more wrong than my division predictions and probably just more off base in general. And I just know that the comments here are going to be a complete fucking shit show in about 2 months. But yeah, screw it. Let's do it anyway. Now, I've never been one to stick too long with a bad take just on principle. Like, I'm willing to admit when I've fucked up. And boy, did I fuck up with Justin Herbert. I mean, that was a doozy, even by my standards. But again, adhering to my traditions of the past, like when all of 4 or 5 games into Patrick Mahomes' career, I put out a video talking about how ridiculous he is. I put out one on Lamar Jackson 3 weeks into his MVP season the following year, talking about how great he had become and how well he had developed as a passer. And then last year, again, I think after like the first 3 or 4 weeks, I put out one on Josh Allen talking about his progress and growth as well. And I think it's safe to say that I'm due to make one on Justin Herbert too, because again, I'm not afraid to say that I was completely wrong about him. The player that we saw at Oregon is not the same player that has a Chargers jersey on right now, and that's for the Chargers' benefit because he is just utterly phenomenal. And that's why I actually have him as my 2021 MVP. And this is not just me like overcorrecting for a bad take. I legitimately think that he can win this award because of how big of a step forward I think the Chargers are going to take this year compared to obviously last year. And when you look at the talent that they've invested around protecting Herbert this year, I mean, he was setting records with arguably the worst pass protecting line in the entire league. I can only imagine how good he's going to be when he actually has time to throw for once. His physical talent is virtually limitless. I mean, the arm strength is insane. Obviously, he's highly mobile, even for kind of a taller, lankier dude. I mean, he just doesn't move like somebody who is as, spindly as him, if that's even the right way to phrase it. Like, he's just a freakish physical talent, and when you pack that in with the fact that he's also a really hard worker and clearly very coachable with how quickly he developed once he kind of got away from that Oregon coaching staff, I mean, the sky is the limit here. I think the Chargers got a legitimate MVP caliber quarterback on their hands, and I do think that the Chargers have a supporting structure from the top down around Justin Herbert to allow that talent to thrive and for him to really take the league by storm this year. Again, I will be making a full film room episode on Herbert at some point, probably in the first 3 to 4 weeks, if tradition is anything to go by, because the last 3 times I've done that, literally in order, going back, it was Pat Mahomes and then Lamar Jackson and then Josh Allen, 1, 2, 3, back to back to back. They all had MVP caliber seasons when I kind of did those, late September looks at how they were developing. I think Justin Herbert is going to be my guy for that this year. I really do think he is that good. And then at Offensive Player of the Year, obviously I'm going to have Patrick Mahomes, who will be an MVP candidate himself, yet again. And when I look at the Chiefs offense and all of the upgrades they've made along the offensive line, just giving Patrick Mahomes enough protection so that he doesn't feel like he needs to drop 12 yards deep in the pocket just to get a throw off, that's actually going to improve his pressure rate a lot and probably keep the Chiefs offense from kind of derailing itself like they do sometimes. Like, they were kind of a streaky offense, believe it or not, where they could put up like 20 points in 5 minutes and then absolutely nothing for 25 minutes. Not to mention that I think the run game is also going to be improved. Like, we saw how they had to pretty much just keep throwing and throwing and throwing on the goal line, whether it was like sprint outs or screens or that kind of stuff. They would do some tap passes, which were basically just a different variation of crack toss, because they just could not run the ball inside the tackles on the goal line. So they just had to keep throwing it. And this year, I think they're going to be a little bit more balanced in the red zone because I think they're actually going to be able to run the ball again, which, believe it or not, will actually help Pat Mahomes as a passer, because if teams actually have to drop a safety down to stop the run again, that kind of opens up all of these deep overs and crossing routes and all the kind of different ways that they punish single high safety looks. And if you take those 2 high safety looks off the menu for the defense, again, that's going to help Pat as a passer. So I'm really big on the offensive line additions they've made, not just for Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but also for Patrick Mahomes. And I think the Chiefs offense, for as good as they were last year, I think they're going to be even better this year. At Defensive Player of the Year, I have Myles Garrett, which might be a little bit of a chalky pick, but, at least I'm not picking Aaron Donald, so I'm keeping it somewhat interesting, even though I would not be shocked if Aaron Donald won it yet again. He's that kind of freak where he could be the first guy to win 4 of these awards, and I would not bat an eye. But Myles Garrett, I think, is also going to be equally deserving just because of how freaky a specimen he is as well. When you look at all of the edge rushers around the league, there's maybe only 1 or 2 guys that I think even hold a candle athletically to Myles Garrett, like 6'5", 265 to 270 in terms of playing weight, 35-inch arms, extremely bendy in the hips. He's got every single move in his pass rushing arsenal. He can win with power. He can win with speed. I mean, he has everything. He is the perfect defensive end. Like, if I was going to compare him to anybody historically, it's probably Bruce Smith. Like, that's the kind of guy we're talking about here. That's how rare I think he is that he can be, I'm not even kidding, one of the greatest defensive players of his generation. The only missing piece has always been health. He dealt with some ankle injuries early on. He got COVID last year, which kind of wrecked his season. And even he'll tell you that he just did not feel right after he got COVID. It took him several months to kind of get back to being his normal self. And so health has kind of been the one thing really standing in his way. But when you look at when he was healthy early on last year, he was on a pace that nobody else was on in the entire league. Like, he probably would have won Defensive Player of the Year last year if he did not get sick. And now going into 2021, where the Browns have even more defensive talent around him, and not to mention their offense is probably going to give him a lot of leads to work with as well, so he can just kind of pin his ears back and go hunt quarterbacks. I really do expect him to have somewhere between 15 and like 18 sacks, maybe even more. I will not discount that possibility. He could very easily lead the league in sacks and take home his first of probably multiple Defensive Player of the Year awards throughout his career. At Offensive Rookie of the Year and Defensive Rookie of the Year, I'll keep this a little bit brief because I expanded on it a lot over on my podcast, the Bootleg Football Podcast, where we just did an entire episode on frontrunners for Rookie of the Year, both offense and defense. So again, I'm just going to kind of keep this short, but I have Zaven Collins and Devonta Smith as my offensive and defensive rookies of the year. And I know what you're thinking. Brett, what are you doing? There's 5 really good rookie quarterbacks that are going to be playing this year. How could you not pick any of them for Rookie of the Year? And quite frankly, it's because I didn't know which one to pick. They've all looked really good. Trevor Lawrence has looked good. Zach Wilson has looked good. Trey Lance and Justin Fields, and obviously Mac Jones, who's now going to be starting from week 1, they've all looked amazing. I don't remember the last time I saw a rookie quarterback class with 5 guys go in the first round where all of them looked like they could start in week 1 and be very capable starters. Like, this is a very rare quarterback class. And quite frankly, I just didn't know who to pick. So in the interest of fairness and not trying to seem super biased or anything like that, or like I'm some sort of hater, I'm just going to ignore the quarterback position entirely and just say that they're all good. And in terms of non-quarterbacks that I think could or at least will challenge for Rookie of the Year, I'm going to go with Devonta Smith. I said it over and over again throughout the pre-draft process that I don't care that he's 170 pounds. I know that he's still going to be able to beat press coverage because nobody can actually touch him at the line of scrimmage. You don't need to be 200 pounds to beat press if they can't actually touch you. He's incredibly quick, incredibly refined as a route runner, and I do think that the whole, Marvin Harrison comparison that was made for him is not that far off. Like, he could very easily be that kind of player, and I think that he was immediately the Eagles' best receiver from the moment he stepped on the field. He is going to be the wide receiver 1 for them, and again, as long as he stays healthy, I think that he's going to get funneled a lot of targets and just put up an absolutely outrageous stat line for a rookie receiver. And then on defense, I had a lot of guys to choose from the pass rushers, the DBs, the linebackers. But again, I went with Zaven Collins because I think that he's the best combination of A, being on the field from the very first snap of the season. Like, he's been the starting Mike linebacker since he was drafted. And B, when you look at his skill set and just physical ability, he's a very rare football player. He's the size of Dante Hightower, but he moves like Deion Jones. He rushes the passer, you can put him on the edge, he plays well in space, he covers, like you can actually run him down the seam with a wide receiver, and he's fucking 255 pounds. Like that's ridiculous. His closest comparison athletically is Brian Urlacher. Like that's the kind of talent we're talking about here. And again, in the preseason, when you look at how he played on film, he had no issues translating to that Cardinals scheme, which is very similar to like a Wade Phillips type defense. That's why J.J. Watt wanted to go there, is because it's a system that he's familiar with. And he had zero problems playing in that system from the moment he got there. He is going to be an absolute star, and in my opinion, he was the missing piece for this Cardinals defense, which overall I think is going to be a lot better than people think. I know that it takes a really special season for an inside linebacker to win Defensive Rookie of the Year, but if anybody is capable of it this year, I do think that it's Zaven Collins. And then for Coach of the Year, I'll just kind of keep this one short. I think it's going to be Brandon Staley. When you look at the turnaround that I expect the Chargers to have, I mean, again, I have Justin Herbert as MVP. I have them going to the playoffs and legitimately challenging the Chiefs, like not just being the second place team from the AFC West, but actually giving them a run for their money and playing them close. This is a very, very good football team. I love Brandon Staley as a coach, and I think the gap that you're going to see, at least in win total from 2020 to 2021, it is going to be enough to justify him getting Coach of the Year, because I think their turnaround as a franchise is just going to be massive. There's really no other way to put it. The 2021 Chargers are legitimately terrifying, I think, for most teams in the AFC, let alone the AFC West. And Brandon Staley, at least to me, will be Coach of the Year because of that. Now, before we get into these conference championship game matchups, and obviously who I think is going to go to the Super Bowl, I do want to take a moment to thank the fine folks over at Felix Gray for sponsoring today's show and for helping to make it possible. Felix Gray are the makers of the best blue light glasses on the market. And if you don't know what these are, and you often find yourself suffering from headaches or an inability to fall asleep right after you use your phone or laptop right before you go to bed, blue light glasses actually help to solve that problem. They work by filtering out the blue light on the light spectrum that's emitted from all of your screens, whether it's your phone or your computer or really any other device. And that blue portion of the light spectrum is what's connected to eye strain and increased risk in macular degeneration, and of course, disruption of your sleep cycle. Felix Gray blue light lenses filter out up to 15 times more blue light than their competition, and they come in both prescription and non-prescription lenses like mine, so that anybody can use them. These are the exact same glasses that I have used literally every single week for about the last year since I first got them, because I'm constantly editing until like 2 or 3 in the morning. And if I wasn't using these on virtually every single one of my late night editing sessions, it would be really hard for me to get to sleep and at least have some semblance of a normal sleep cycle. So these have been an absolute lifesaver for me. If you want to check out Felix Gray and all of their different frame styles that they offer, because their variety is actually really, really huge in terms of styles and all that, you can check them out at the link in the description below. They have absolutely done wonders for my eyes over the last year, and I could not possibly recommend them more. But with that being said, we have a couple completely fake conference championship games to speculate on and a totally made up pretend Super Bowl to pick. So yeah, let's get to it. And I know this might seem rather boring, but I mean, if the playoff seeds didn't give away who I thought were the best teams in each conference, I don't really know how I could pick any other combination here. I've got the Chiefs and the Browns in the AFC Championship game, obviously being hosted in Arrowhead. And then I have the Packers going to Tampa Bay to play against the Bucks in a rematch of last year's championship game as well. I had all of these teams as top 2 seeds for a reason. I think they're all incredibly talented. I think that they have great coaches. I think they have great quarterbacks. And health permitting, I think that all of them will be in the Final Four this year and battling it out to go to a Super Bowl. Yes, it was tough to leave out Buffalo. It was tough to leave out really anybody from the NFC West. But when I was just kind of looking at the matchup of like, okay, let's say the Browns are playing the Bills, who would I take right now to win that game? Oddly enough, I think I would take the Browns. And that's nothing against the Bills. They're a phenomenal team. I just think the Browns are a little bit more well-rounded, and I think their overall talent level, even if they're not as good at the quarterback position, their overall talent level is better. In terms of who I think is actually going to win these championship games, well, that's probably pretty easy to guess too. I'm just going to go with the Chiefs and the Buccaneers. I think we're going to see a rematch in the Super Bowl, yet another playoff meeting between Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes. Except this time, when I look at how much better the Chiefs have gotten this offseason, particularly at offensive line, which was kind of the main reason why they lost that game last year anyway, when I look at the improvements they made up front, I actually think the Chiefs will win the Super Bowl this time and kind of even it up 1-1 in this, I guess you could say, new rivalry that's randomly popped up between Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes over the last several years. They've certainly been the most compelling rivalry, to me at least, and I think getting another Super Bowl between them, it's just going to be amazing. The Buccaneers, to me, are the best team in the NFC. The Chiefs, to me, are the best team in the AFC. And a rematch, I just think, is the best case scenario for at least neutral fans like myself, because I just want to see the best teams go at it in the biggest moments. And I think that's what that game would be. Plus, if we get Tyreek Hill catching another touchdown over Antoine Winfield and he hits him back with the peace sign, just kind of completing that arc that's been built over the last 2 years, I mean, holy shit, that would be a great moment. So again, just as a neutral fan, in terms of entertainment perspective, that's the game that I want. And if I had to pick it right now between Chiefs and Tampa Bay, I'm taking the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl for the second time in 3 years. So that'll do it. Those are my season predictions for the year. I hope you guys put your own down in the comments. You can fill out your playoff seeding. You can tell me who you think are going to win all the awards. Tell me who's going to go to the conference championship games. Who's your Super Bowl pick? Just let me know down in the comments below, because I'm genuinely curious how many of you agree with me that it's going to be Chiefs and Tampa back-to-back years. Maybe that's not so crazy of a take, or at least not as crazy as me having Justin Herbert as MVP, but yeah, just let me know what you think down below. And then remember, if any of you are going to be at the Raiders game in week 1, I'm going to go see Ravens at Raiders over in Vegas, because I've always wanted to see that stadium, and now I have an opportunity to, so I'm taking it. And then I'm going to be at Seattle in week 2 for Titans at Seahawks. Just let me know if you're going to be at either of those games, because I want to meet as many of you as I can and just, say thank you for supporting the channel and letting me do all this for a living. By the time I post again, I think I'm going to be already in Vegas. I might be actually making an episode from Vegas in addition to the project that I'm working on with Caesars, which that's going to be sick, but more on that later. I'll see you guys very, very soon regardless. And until then, cheers.